Hello and welcome back in the channel. Today's topic is the best beginner throwing knife, or how to choose our first set of throwing knives. Now, first of all, in my opinion, the only time the best beginner throwing knives exist is in advertisement. When people try to sell you something and they go like, "Oh, this is the best, this is the only, this is the one." Now, in my opinion, there are good throwing knives and implements. There are okay, or the ones that a bit harder to throw, a bit needs a bit more work. Again, knives and implements. And there's garbage. That's it. Okay, and in the good throwing knife category, there are ones that's easy to learn with, but that is dependent on everybody. Like, it's different for everybody. It's not gonna be the same for me. It's not gonna be the same for you. As I have already said in different videos, to be a good throwing knife, it has to have a certain specifications or characteristics. And if you wanna learn and throw conventional rotation, you need bigger knives. You need 12 to 16 inches long, about an ounce to an inch as a weight to length ratio, and either naturally balanced or blade heavy. Now, okay, if you live in a metric world, that's about 300 to 400 millimeter and about 1 to 3 gram to every millimeter. So a 350 millimeter long knife should be around 350 grams. Now, if you're interested in no spin throwing, your knives should be shorter, 200 to 300 millimeters long, and about 1 gram per millimeter as a weight to length ratio. And the knife should be naturally balanced or handle heavy. But these are just guidelines. These are just kind of a rule of thumb. Within that, everybody will find the knife that really suits them and the one that's not your favorite. Now, I also have to mention there are such a thing as what we like to call as bow shuriken, which is basically a throwing spike. Now, these tend to be wider in their weight and the length. They can be as small as a knitting needle, and they can be as big as this. Not really. They can be one end, they can be two-pointed, they can be square, round, hexagonal, they can be flat, wide range. So there are throwing knives or no spin knife that more falls into this lighter or actually heavier bow shurikens, so it's a 130 to 150 gram weight range. Now, and some of them are really good, and some people find them really good as a throwing knife, as a learner knife, even as a learner knife. Now, one thing, so if there's such a wide range, how do you choose your first set? And when I say set, when you start knife throwing, you need preferably 3 of the same. So if this is the knife you get, for example, you should have at least 2, but preferably 3 of exactly the same. And if you have singletons, like you have one of these, you have one of these, and you have one of these, then only throw one at a time. So you only throw, for example, this one, go retrieve it, keep throwing this for a while before you change it. Don't try to throw 3 different knives, 3 different weight distribution knife, one after the other, especially when you're learning, because that will confuse your brain. Throw one, or get three of the same, and then you can throw, retrieve, throw. Okay, so that's very important. Now, but how do you choose your first set? So first of all, obviously, you use the guidelines of the weight and the length, blah blah blah. Then you have to have, of course, you have to have a visually like it. So, for example, okay, this is a really nice knife for me, but for you it may not be. Now, the question: are you going for a non-symmetric knife or a symmetric knife? Again, you just have to take the plant and say, well, I'm gonna pick one or the other. Even if you think you will like one or the other, it may change, or you may actually do. You can't tell from just by looking at it. Now then comes the hard part. How heavy should I pick within this range? Now, there is no easy answer to that, but there are a few considerations you can keep in mind. Okay, so for the knife to, when it hits the target, it has to exert a certain amount of force on the target to stick, or as it's called in knife throwing, penetrate the target, so to stick in the target. Now this force can be worked out on a force equals mass time acceleration. Now the mass is the weight of the knife, the acceleration is how fast you get it going towards the target. Now, yes, those who will say, yeah, there's other factors. Yes, there are a few more other factors, but they minute. For our purposes, it's doesn't make a big difference. So if you're making a scientific paper, obviously you're going to have to factor those in. But for us, it doesn't matter. It's not making a huge difference. But what this tells us, if you have two different knives and you throw them, you introduce the same acceleration to both, and one knife is twice as heavy as the other, the twice as heavy knife will hit with twice as much force. So in that sense, the saying is actually correct, or proven to be correct, that the heavier knives are easier to learn with. But there is other considerations to be made. So the heavier the knife, the bigger the arc towards the target will be. The lighter the knife, the easier is to keep a flatter fly path. It still will be a little bit of curve in it, but the lighter knife is easier to make a flatter flight path. Now, with the heavier knife, we'll feel that it's flying a little bit slower. The lighter knife will feel like it's flying faster. Now, also to be thinking about, knife throwing is a physical activity, a little bit. But you are working on muscles that you're not usually using. So a heavier knife, even if you go between I'm mostly a no-spin thrower, so I'm talking about mostly no-spin knives. You go on to a 220 gram no-spin knife, and then you pick up a 270 gram no-spin knife. There's 50 gram difference. 50 gram under 2 ounces. It's not, doesn't sound like much, but you throw it for half an hour, you put in a couple of hundred throws into the target, you will feel the difference, especially if you're a smaller stature person or younger throwers. So there's that as well. Lighter knife sometimes easier to control if if you're a little bit of smaller person. But on the other hand, the lighter knife will require a little bit of a better technique. Heavier the knife, the knife will do half of the work. Now, another way to figure out what is a good beginner's knife is actually get into the knife throwing community and ask the question. But don't ask the question of what's the best beginner knife. Ask the question of which knife did you guys learn with, or which knife is your current favorite. And of course, state you want to do rotation or no spin throwing, because that will give you answers of who likes what. Now again, prepare to get so many different answers, because it's very seldom that two people will say the same knives. Now also be prepared to be pointed towards custom knives. Now, custom knives are a bit more expensive than mass-produced knives, sometimes a lot more expensive, but you are paying for craftsmanship, you're paying for the skill and knowledge of a throwing knife maker. And those guys who make throwing knives, they are usually knife throwers themselves, so they actually developed a style of knives that they like, and they reproducing that for everybody else's enjoyment. Now, you do not need custom knives to start knife throwing, but somewhere along the line you will want to get them, because they're much nicer to throw than anything else. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, that's just the truth about it. Now, the other thing you can do is actually talk to a custom throwing knife maker. Ask his opinion, his or her opinion, on what in his range or her range, what he deems as a good beginner's knife, and they will point out which one they think handles better or easier to throw. Okay, because sometimes as you develop your throwing, you're not necessarily going to stay with the ones that are easy to throw. You might move towards that you like better, even if it's maybe not the easiest to learn with. So that's about it. There's no hard and fast answer, unfortunately, of this is it, this is the best beginners. But there are knives that are easier. So with all this said and done, my favorite knife is 250 millimeter long, no spin, 250 millimeter long, around 235 grams, and the balance point is 100 millimeter from the handle end. Now this is the knife, is not by far not my favorite when I look at it. I'm just like, oh, okay. But even if I haven't thrown it for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever, I pick it up and it just naturally fits in the way I throw no spin. So I'm not saying that's the best, because there is no such thing as the best, but that is my most favorite, in the way of, yep, I can count on it. It will give me a good stick rate all the time. So, yep, hope you learned something or find the information here interesting, and I'll see you guys the next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.